Hashem Naaseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here, Tuesday night Shiur, Ikvita de Mashiach. Our series based on the Kuntris of Rav Elchanan Wasserman, Alav Shalom, called The Era of Mashiach. This series has, Baruch Hashem, been an eye-opener for many of us. Quite frankly, anyone that's been watching this Shiur and is not an expert in this specific kuntris has had their eyes opened by it. So tonight's shiur, BeEzrat HaShem, will be for a refuah shlema for Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Rav Efraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, David ben Esriya, Doris bat Jora, Orit bat Ilana, Michal bat Yael, Talia bat Sarah, Yitro ben Avraham, Stefan ben Katarina, Abigail bat bat Surya, and also for a Atzlacha Rabba for Oshri ben Doris, Gabi ben Doris, Elad ben Doris, Shaul ben Farzane, Yitro ben Avraham, Marsha bat Julie, Alexander ben Marsha, Ayla bat Marsha, Samuel ben Marsha, Reuven Chaim ben Pala Parel, Rachel bat Pala Parel, Shmuel Yitzchak ben Pala Parel, Naftali Tzvi ben Pala Parel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yivarech otam, and all of Am Yisrael and all of the righteous Noahide that support us, help us to do all the wonderful things that we're trying to do, Baruch Hashem. A little bit of a updates. First off, this will be the last lecture of the year. BeEzrat HaShem, the year, according to biblical times, ends or begins at Nisan, and Pesach is among us. It's in a couple of days. We're going to take off these next couple of weeks. We have, of course, the Chag anyway. That's we can't do lectures anyway. And try to re-energize, recuperate, work on some other things for the organization. Of course, there's never really a real break because you have constant issues that you have to deal with people from time to time, which in my case is time to time means from second to second. But Baruch Hashem, we're going to try to do our best. So we'll take off some time, and but there's still going to be, BeEzrat HaShem, new videos published when it's not holiday. Each day, BeEzrat HaShem, we'll try to release some new stuff, some new movies, some new other things. So there's still a lot going on, but as far as new lectures, we'll take off a little bit of time, BeEzrat HaShem. I'll keep you guys posted as to when's the next time we'll be back. Aside from that, we have our Kimcha de PESACH running strong, Baruch Hashem. This is the biggest food giveaway that we've ever had as an organization. So far, we're estimating that we've reached somewhere between 4,500 to 5,000 people, Baruch Hashem, with less than half the budget of what we actually anticipated we'll need or we'll raise. We haven't raised anywhere near as much money as we expected. But which Baruch Hashem, thank God that we actually sent the money, ahead of time. So we had to send a little bit more money, Baruch Hashem. But maybe some of you forgot that Kimcha de PESACH is a mitzvah that you have to fulfill for Pesach. It's not a suggestion. It's something that each and every single Jew has to do. And needless to say, every single person that cares about Jewish people should care about the poor people, especially the ones that are righteous, the ones that are learning Torah all day, which are the ones that we're focusing on to help in Eretz Yisrael. We got a bunch of pictures and videos from the different people that are giving away the food. I haven't published 90% of them, but I just sent out a few of them today. One was a nice letter and with some pictures that the community of the Bnei Menashe Keilah sent us. We helped about 20 or so families over there. Then you have the community in Netanya, run by our own dear Rabbi Efraim Kachlon, Rabbi Efraim's father. There's about 70 plus families over there, maybe more, give or take. And Baruch HaShem, so we got a video from them. We got some pictures, Baruch HaShem, of all the wonderful people taking the food, distributing it, volunteering. And that's in Netanya is also where myself and also Rabbi Efraim were born. So it's definitely hold a special place in our hearts. We have a lot of family over there in Netanya. There's also, we got some different things from Yavniel, from Yerushalayim, from Bnai Brak, from a bunch of different places that Baruch HaShem we've given away the food. And this year we really tried to do our best to give away food rather than to give away money, because this way we were sure that the people that were getting it actually needed it and didn't just want it. Sometimes when you give away money, somebody that has an addiction to money, even if he has millions of dollars, will take the 500 shekels or 1,000 shekels you're giving away, because unfortunately, as the Gemara in Masechet Sukkah says, "Oev kesef lo yizba kesef." A person that loves money will never have enough money. So this, Baruch HaShem, we didn't really encounter very much over the years, but of course you'll find here and there someone that's taking the money and doesn't really need it, which is very annoying. But nonetheless, all of the people that ever needed, that we know of, we gave, even if that meant that we had to go above budget. And even if it was after the campaign was over, but we tried to do our best. This year we actually had a whole team of people, especially Rabbanit Sarah, Rabbi Efraim's wife, may Hashem bless her, and also Rabbanit Alimi, may Hashem bless her as well. Both take and have people fill out forms and make sure that every single person that was signing up actually did need, and every community leader or rabbi was really in charge of what's going to be distributed. So a lot of work went behind the scenes, and we're just scratching the surface. There's still a lot more to go, a lot more to do. Some people have gotten their food already. Some people will be getting their food or got their food today. Some people got food on Sunday. Some people will be getting food tomorrow and the following day. But there's still a lot to do, a lot of money needed. If you have not given for Kimcha the Pischa, you still have a couple of days left to partner with us and be part of this giveaway. Whatever we have, we're going to be giving away, and to help people. Even during Chol HaMoed, there are sometimes many cases where there's a whole group of people that don't have. So whatever you give, even if it's literally in the last minute, you could be assured we're going to be using it to help poor people in Eretz Yisrael, BeEzrat HaShem. And this is just one of those mitzvot that sometimes people don't understand the value of it and the expense of it. So they give, okay, so it's tzedakah, okay, no problem, and they'll send you $10, even though they have thousands and thousands of dollars to give, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market, and millions of dollars in real estate. They send you $10 as if they're fulfilling some mitzvah. It's not really fulfilling a mitzvah, because you have to understand, Kimcha the Pischa is a mitzvah to feed a family, to feed a person for the Leila Seder. And, anyone that's a Jew knows that that's not a cheap meal. Even if you try to save money and you buy it literally from the wholesaler, like we are, you're still going to come out with in Israel, $380, I think, is the cheapest you could even imagine. There's a few organizations that tried to contact us to see if they could also sign a deal with this distributor. Because no one's getting it for that. Usually you're looking at $1,000, $1,500 a family. So Baruch HaShem, we're able to do it to save the money and give the stuff to the families. Even the people that have received from us in the past, were flabbergasted at the amount of food that they got this year, which is practically double what they ever got before. even though it was similar cost for us, just because, again, of the deal we had. But if you're looking at different countries, especially if you're looking at the U.S., you're said that is most likely not going to cost you less than $1,000. You have the matzah, you have all the food and this and that. It's not a cheap holiday. It's not a cheap holiday. Let's just say that. So the point is that we're trying to do everything possible to help these families have a respectable holiday, and not one where they have to pretty much be sat on. So that's the key. Anyone that wants to be involved in it is welcome to. Anyone who doesn't is also welcome to not. Kadosh Baruch Hu will send it one way or the other, but we always try to get our friends involved, as we learned from the Gemara. Rabbi Akadosh, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, was a very wealthy person, and but yet each time there was a maaseh chesed or some type of tzedakah that was needed, he would always call all of his wealthy friends to get involved. Now, the Chachamim ask, why is Rebbe, who could pay for the entire city to live, why is he asking his rich friends to get involved with him on some chesed that he could afford with his pocket change? What is he doing? He says, for the sake of sharing the mitzvah with others in order to save everybody from Gehinnom. That's actually the answer that Rabbi Akiva, his rabbi's rabbi, Rabbi Akadosh rabbi, his rabbi was Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva, when he was asked by one of the apikosim, one of the heretics of the generation, Turnus was his name, Yimach Shimo, he came to him and asked him, if Hashem loved the poor people, if Hashem loves the Jews, why does he make them poor? So Rabbi Akiva answered, to save the rest of us from Gehinnom. Meaning that it's even if someone is righteous and is keep Shabbat and protect his brit, and the woman is modest and everything else, from time to time you're going to have some avirot, you can have some different sins, intentional, unintentional, perhaps ones that you forgot to do TeShuvah for. So Rabbi Akiva says that tzedakah that you're giving to help poor people is going to help a person pay for some of those sins. Not everything, but nonetheless, but to help them. So what do you do with the rest of the sins? That all depends if you did TeShuvah or not. And that's actually the question that a lot of people ask. What do you do if you have a lot of big sins? And I always answer you guys the same exact thing, which is what we learned from the prophet Jeremiah, what we learned from the prophet Yechezkel, what we learned from everybody across the Torah, that talks about our obligation to not only learn Torah, but to share it with the world, to support it financially, to help Am Yisrael do TeShuvah. And that's actually part of the topic of what we're going to talk about tonight, because everyone knows that they have a responsibility for themselves, but at the same token, everyone also knows that they have a responsibility for the next generation. If you are an unselfish human being, you already know that whatever you're doing is not something that's only going to affect you. Technically, what you're supposed to be doing during your life, and I'm not just talking about what you're doing today or what you do tomorrow, but what you build throughout your whole life is technically supposed to outlive you. You're not a horse. You're not a cow. You're obviously someone that wants to build something. Some people even go to the next level and want to build a dynasty of some kind, and some people even succeed in doing it. Question is, what kind of dynasty did you build? What kind of lineage do you have? So everyone knows, whether Jew or Gentile, that we don't just live for ourselves, we live for the next generation. Hence the 18, 19, and 20-year-old that didn't realize that they're living for the next generation, the minute that they got married and had a kid, or they got their girlfriend pregnant as a nice surprise, they realized that their life as they knew it is over, and now they have to be more concerned about somebody else's life more than their own, if they at least want to be a decent parent. Or they could just be one of these deadbeats that that runs away from responsibility. The point being is, anyone that's a decent human being knows that they have a responsibility for the next generation, and not just their own kids, but even their own kids' grandkids. So this is one of the things that has become one of the biggest topics of discussion in the Jewish world and in the world in general over the years, especially as we see that this current generation is deteriorating at a rapid pace, where you have our grandparents look more and more like aliens than they do look like our generation today. You see how our grandparents, and I'm even talking about both the Jewish and the Gentile world for the most part, you see they literally look nothing like us. Generally speaking, people were modest. Generally speaking, people were relatively much more decent than they are today, much more honest than they were today, had a much stronger word than they have today. They were much harder working than they are today, and quite frankly, they were also much smarter. It's a mistake to think that our generation is much smarter than the generation before us. Our generation simply innovated the things of the previous generation. They didn't discover anything, or at least they discovered very little. The previous generations made major discoveries, which requires a lot more intellect. But nonetheless, the previous generation looked very different than us. If you look at some old videos from 70, 80 years ago, or pictures from 100 years ago, it looks like everybody was going to a wedding because they all wore suits. But in the reality is that was the daily attire. That was the way people looked all the time. The way people look like today, even if they are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, they're celebrities of some kind. You see them walking around and it looks like they're wearing something you would go to sleep with. They look like they're wearing pajamas. Or they're simply something that is not that much different than what they shower with. It's just a very different world. The problems of the past, if there was ever, let's say, some type of shooting, you had usually two different types of cases. Occasionally you had murder happen, and murder has always been in the world, and you had war. Today, you have something very different. Of course, you have the murder like we've always had, and you have the war that we've always had. The wars have changed quite a bit. There's a lot more war from a distance than there is face-to-face battle. But nonetheless, war has never stopped. The ego of man has never stopped. But one thing that has changed is that you see that there's a lot more terrorist attack today. And not terrorists from different countries, which also happened September 11th, and the different bombings. The nice Muslim terrorists that typically are like to entertain the world with. Their gift to society is terrorism. The Jews brought the Torah, and the Muslims, they brought terrorism. So at least we know what we're looking at. But either way, you have yourself a society where it's not the terrorist from a different country that you're most concerned about, but rather the terrorist that is a citizen. The terrorist that is a citizen, in some cases, what looks like an upstanding citizen, pays taxes, has a job, goes to the doctor when he's sick, and so on and so forth, has kids. But then that terrorist decides that he's going to shoot up some type of salon or some type of postal office or whatever they decide on that day, or school. And I remember reading a statistic some time ago, it's probably been at least about 2-3 years, that we got to a point where in America there was at least one mass shooting per week. One shooting per week. This is not a problem that you see in other countries, although it does happen from time to time, but nowhere near the numbers that you have in the United States. Arguably the richest country in the world, has the most amount of psychopaths that lose their mind. Now, usually, those shooters have a common denominator. Those massive killers have a common denominator. And, one of them is that they are usually addicted to something, very, very typically pornography, like the recent shooter said he was. But the other common denominator is that they're young. They're very, very young. Teenagers, early 20s, most of the time even teenagers, and the ages sometimes baffle you. How did this little zit get a gun, or guns and grenades and all these different things? How do you get access to this stuff? And this all started with the Columbine shooting, which is probably before the memory of some of you that are watching. You can look it up. Columbine shooting of a couple of psychopaths that shot up a school and killed a lot of people. And pretty much it's been hell on earth ever since for people that are send their kids to public school, that are part of the general society. And because at this stage, there's literally a statistic, a very high statistic, a very high ratio of probability that a parent that sends their kid to a public school may not see that kid ever again, but not because of an accident, but rather because of a terrorist shooting. And unfortunately, this is happening across the country. It's not just one city or one state. It's across the country, and it's not just one particular part of society. It's across the board. Although it does seem like there's more white kids that are psychopaths than there are black kids, but of course the black kids have their own problems too in their communities. The point being is that you see that society has a generation that is technically supposed to be what we look at as this is the next generation. This is the next generation. Now, anyone with eyes in their head says, if this is the next generation, we have some serious problems. Because the previous generation wasn't exactly all that. We had our own issues. But if that's the next generation, we have some serious problems. Now, of course, you're always going to say, yeah, but look, there's some good things. There's the Facebooks of the world and the Googles of the world and all these young geniuses that are coming up with the next Googles of the world and the next Amazon. Yeah, that's great. There's always an anomaly. But the general next generation is a very problematic generation, and that's just across the board. If you look into the Jewish world, we have a new set of problems. A set of problems that perhaps we've had some before and some problems we did not have before. And this set of problems is some of the things that Rav Wasserman is bringing right now. You see, because last time we had this shiur, Rav Wasserman was telling us that although the Zionists, the modern Orthodox mentality of the time, needless to say, the modern Orthodox of today, many of them, the Dati Leumi, the nationalistic type mentality where, Jews and Christian united type of mentality, they all will tell you that the key part of is to support the land of Israel and to be united with everybody, Jews of all types, religions of all types, kumbaya, everybody's happy, and so on and so forth, which is obviously antithetical to the Torah. We're not saying we need to be at war with everybody, but to befriend everybody, to work with everyone, is obviously not something that the Torah allows. Needless to say, it's not something that the Torah says. But one of the things that has led many people to support that type of mentality is because as the generations deteriorated, it wasn't just the deterioration of knowledge that was our problem, but rather it was also a deterioration of ethics, where you see in the previous generation, my grandfather's generation, for example, which my grandfather Gibli, I've told you a few stories about him. He was a hero. Him and his brothers were giborim. They were really, really special people that helped anyone that they possibly could, even if that person was not exactly the in the best of situations to be helped. And needless to say, one of the things that my grandfather did is, when there was a lot of death in the war, he was the one that would go into the rubbles of the buildings and the destruction and pick up the body parts and bury them, give them an honorable burial. A lot of people, especially Ashkenazim, that think that only the Ashkenazim suffered from the Holocaust. Now, although The Ashkenazim did suffer more than, generally speaking, more than Sfaradim. There were quite a few Sfaradim that suffered in the Holocaust, and my grandparents were definitely part of that. And it's foolish to think that only one part of the Jewish world suffered. It was all of Judaism and frankly all of society that suffered from the Holocaust. And anytime the Jewish people suffer, the whole world suffers. Sometimes it's just a matter of time before the world realizes it. But the point is that my grandfather, he would do a lot of different things, bury a lot of people, and he would tell stories about his times and so on. And he said that in Libya, the not everybody was exactly a scholar. Many people were not scholars. Some did not even know how to read and write. But everybody knew, everybody in the Jewish community knew that you're not allowed to ride a bicycle on Shabbat. Now, of course, this is a rabbinical prohibition. It's not a biblical prohibition, but nonetheless, it's a custom of Am Yisrael to follow all of these and not to ride bicycles on Shabbat. Unfortunately, there are some keilot here in Florida, and I'm sure in other places, where the rabbis either have not learned or simply care less about the previous generation's rabbis and say nothing about seeing their community members ride bicycles on Shabbat. Needless to say, many of them ride cars on Shabbat, which is a biblical prohibition, because it's fire upon fire. It's millions of fires every single time you press the gas pedal. But anyway, everyone knew in Libya that you are not allowed to ride a bicycle. But from time to time, there was a bad apple that would ride a bicycle, and anytime they saw these simple Jewish people that were not scholars, they would see one of the fellow Jews in the community ride a bicycle in the community. They know who he is, and they wait for Motzei Shabbat, write down the name, go to his house, and take him to the Bet Din on Sunday. The following day, take him to the Bet Din. We're suing him. He is violating the commandments. He is desecrating the community. He's desecrating the Torah. Bet Din fine him, and they would fine him. And in some places, they would even whip him. This was the case. Now, I know it wasn't necessarily the same in other places. Some places, yes. Some places, absolutely not, especially in Europe. But the point being is that this was the previous generation, that even the sinners accepted upon themselves the punishment that came with sinning. This was absolutely normal. In today's world, many times the community members are afraid to tell each other that they're wrong. Needless to say, the actual rabbis are actually afraid to tell the community members that they're wrong. And I don't blame some of them, because sometimes you tell somebody, listen, you're wrong, and they lose their mind on you. And most people don't want to deal with this headache. Now, of course, we've talked about it 1.5 million times of how there are some people that actually steer people wrong. And those are the Erev Rav that we've talked about 1,000,000 times. But let's put those aside. There are sometimes good rabbis, good people, that see their community members doing things that are wrong, but don't say anything. Why? Because they don't want to get involved in any type of conflict. They don't want to get into any type of issues and so on and so forth. And I've seen decent people stay quiet and ruin society no different than the wicked people that are doing it intentionally. Why? Because we have a mitzvah, obligation in the Torah, ocheach tochiach et amitecha. You must rebuke your fellow. And when people do not do it, they bring destruction to the world. I saw this in Boca Raton, where I had a whole group of people that used to attend my shiurim, and many of them, when we were fighting against Goldberg and Company, that he was bringing the Christian missionary to the community, many of the people that would come to my shiurim or were big fans and liked what we were doing and helping the community do TeShuvah, many of them told me, yes, you're 100% right, good, somebody has to tell them something. And I said, great, thank you for the support, but why don't you say something also? Why don't you share it? Why don't you do something? Oh, no, listen, I already live here for 20 years. My kids go to school, and my job here, I have customers and this and that. And in so many words, everybody, like a little weasel worm, went back into some type of hole in the ground and wanted to protect their own comfort. This, Rabotai, is part of the reason, the biggest part of the reason of why I left that particular community, because I saw that the leadership over there is so horrible, it's already infected the good in the community. Needless to say, the bad ones. So that's what's happening around the world. But now we have to say, okay, you know what? BeEzrat HaShem, the next generation will be better. Right? That's the hope everybody always has. Okay, maybe I'm not the scholar I want to be. Maybe I'm not the biggest tzaddik that I would like to be. But listen, I'll invest into my son. I'll invest into my kids. I'll invest into my daughters. And they're going to be better than me. Well, lo and behold, you look at the generation today, and you have kids that sometimes they say that they're yeshiva bachurim, they go to yeshiva, but they walk around with a mohawk. Or they have an earring, or they have all types of different things that don't belong in Klal Yisrael. So now we see that the next generation is not necessarily what we'd hope for it to be. And Rav Wasserman says, the younger generation, even in his time, the younger generation has not the slightest concept of what a Jew is. It has been brought home to us that without the Torah, we cannot exist as Jews even decades. Yet we have existed without the land of Israel for 2,000 years. So for all of those people that think that living in Eretz Yisrael is like the whole Torah, it's the number one mitzvah, here Rav Wasserman says this is obviously a mistake. Although living in Eretz Yisrael is good, it's a mitzvah, especially if you are becoming more religious by living there, your rabbi lives over there, you're around Talmidei Chachamim over there, you live in a Haredi community, great, no problem. But don't think for a second that if it was not that, if you became less religious in Israel, if there was shlom bayit problems in Israel, if there was any type of issues of having your kids attend school over there while they were already going to good yeshivot in the country that you came from, if you're not allowed to leave, because don't question that for a second, you have to leave. It's not a matter of why, because the whole point of living in Israel is if it's going to make you more religious. If it's going to make you less religious, it's not even a mitzvah, because we have survived without the land of Israel for 2,000 years, but we wouldn't survive even a decade, Rav Wasserman says, without the Holy Torah, because the Torah is what makes us Jewish, not the land. Now here he continues and he says we best understand the point by an example. For man to exist, Rav Wasserman says, he requires air to breathe and bread to eat. What must he do if he lacks both? And what must be supplied to him first, air or bread? It's clear that without air there will soon be nobody to provide with bread. He simply gives us a rhetorical question where obviously everyone that has a few pebbles in their head knows that this is as clear as day. It's just to clarify a point. Everyone needs air, everyone needs bread to eat, but if you were lacking both, of course the first thing we would have to give you is air to breathe, because if you can't breathe, the food is not going to help you because you'll die. Whereas not having the food is not necessarily going to kill you if you wait a little longer. Eretz Yisrael is a necessity for the people of Israel. But the Torah is a prior necessity. We are witnesses to the spectacle of the gradual extinction of Torah due to the fact that the majority of the younger generation are cut off from it. The Torah being the air that we breathe, the one that gives us a spiritual fulfillment and a reason to exist, while the land is simply the bread. You could live without it. You could eat something else perhaps. But he says that we're watching that this generation, he's talking about his generation 80 years ago, already was at a major decline due to what was happening in the world at the time with the Enlightenment movement, with the Zionists, the Ymach Shemam v'Zichram, that caused so much destruction to Judaism during that time before, and needless to say today, all of that was happening when my grandparents and different family members came from Libya, from Tripoli, from different parts of the world, and make aliyah to Eretz Yisrael. The first thing that the Zionists would tell them, listen, over here, you don't have to keep mitzvot. You don't have to keep mitzvot. No, what do you mean? We have to keep mitzvot. Of course, in this community, we're going to, implement the laws that we had, to ride a bicycle even on Shabbat. And the Zionists, the first thing would tell them, no, cut off the peyot, cut off everything. You don't need to do that here. Those are good rules when you live in the exile. Keeping Shabbat and the kashrut, all that stuff, that's because to keep you Jewish. But now that you're living in Eretz Yisrael, you don't need to keep anything. And that's what they would tell, and that's how they would destroy every single family that was not strong in Torah. Every single family that was not strong in Torah was literally destroyed one after another. They would force the kids to go to secular Zionistic schools, or else threaten the parents that they're not going to give them coupons to be able to have food. Either starve to death or send your kid to an anti-Torah school. And that's what they did to countless families in the Aliyah. And of course, the Zionists were not the first ones to enter Eretz Yisrael. There were already many religious Jews that already lived in Eretz Yisrael, as we'll find out from here in a moment. There were many religious Jews that already lived in Eretz Yisrael before the Zionists ever put their foot into the land. There were always Jews living in Eretz Yisrael, but unfortunately, once the Zionists came with their money and their power and their connections, they took over. They took over. But Rav Wasserman says that the generation now is in a situation where it's clear that this Torah is being destroyed to such an extent that the majority of the younger generation have no concept of what Torah really is. If you ask them, who is the best basketball player in the NBA today? You ask 5 kids, you may get the same answer, you may get 5 different answers, but nonetheless, you will get an answer. You ask them, who is the best football player out there? You're going to get 5 different answers perhaps, but nonetheless, you will get an answer. What is the highest paid player in the Major League Baseball? For sure, you'll get an answer. You'll get an answer. Who's the richest man in the world? You'll get an answer. Who is the founder of Amazon? You'll get an answer. You'll get an answer for those questions. What is the most popular television show? Many times you'll get multiple answers. Best movie. You'll even get excitement. Perhaps even a tear will shed from their eye, telling you about the most recent film they watched of some superhero or some murderer or some other type of psychopath that they watched on a screen do something strange. You'll get an answer. But you'll ask them, who wrote the Mishnah? Huh? What's that? Is that a book? Is that a story? Is that their last movie? Is that a comic? Most kids are not going to know what you're talking about. Most kids are not going to know what you're talking about. Who is the rabbi of Rabbi Akiva? Huh? What do you mean? Who's Rabbi Akiva? He's the local Chabad? What are you talking about? Who is this guy? What are you talking about? I even went to a few yeshivot and I've spoken at them. And sometimes it's even on tape. And you see it in the lecture where I talk to a bunch of young kids and I ask the kids, how many of you want to be like Moshe Rabbeinu? Not a single kid would raise their hand. How many of you want to be like LeBron James, the famous basketball player? Almost every hand was raised, including one time a kid that was paraplegic wanted to be like LeBron James. Now, again, I don't blame him for wanting to have a better physical shape, no questions asked. But how come you don't want the same thing? How come you don't want to be Moshe Rabbeinu? Because he was able to walk. How come you don't relate to him? Why? Because, Rabotai Karim, the generation today does not necessarily connect to the things they're reading in the yeshiva many times. And if they're not going to yeshiva, if they're going to public school, you'll virtually see no difference between them and the non-Jewish classmates that they have. Sometimes you'll see the non-Jewish classmates are actually more well-behaved than their Jewish counterparts. Now, of course, this is a reality. It's not up for dispute. It's just a reality of the situation. There is a solution. The solution is to learn more Torah and to implement it into the house. But unfortunately, sometimes you have a kid that wants to do TeShuvah, as I've seen and worked with countless young people, boys and girls throughout the years, to help them do TeShuvah. And sometimes the biggest enemy is not the school. The biggest enemy is not the difficulty of the Torah or the subject in itself or perhaps becoming more religious. Sometimes the biggest difficulty is the addiction to desires that their parents have, where the parents do not want to change. They do not want to observe the Torah. They do not want their kid to observe the Torah because their kid reminds them of their lack of religiosity. Their kid reminds them of their immorality. The kid reminds them of their mistakes. And many times you'll see that parents are the biggest enemy of the Torah that the kid could ever have. And we've even had experiences where the parents have decided to send the kid to a Christian school. A Christian school, but not a Jewish school. Are you religious Christians? No. So why are you sending them to a Christian school? It's a good school. Okay, but the yeshiva is also a good school. No, I heard bad things about yeshiva. What, all Christian schools have good things said about them? There's no pedophiles there, there's no rapes over there, there's no murder over there? Only the yeshivot have problems? Obviously, they didn't even look into. Why? Because the Satan blinds them. Satan doesn't even make them think about bad things could possibly be at this huge Christian school or Catholic school. But the Jewish school must have problems. Look, I looked on the internet and it said some rabbi in a different country, in a different place, at a different year, he did something bad. So surely that's applicable to all yeshivot. And I saw the guy at the store who was religious, he wore a hat and he had a beard, and he was really not nice to me. So that must be that all religious people are bad. And I heard an article that, all of these religious people, they don't pay taxes, they don't go to the army, so surely they're all bad people. Did you ever verify? Did you ever check? Or are you just assuming? And that's what happens. That's what the Satan does. The Satan blinds the eyes of the parents. Needless to say, sometimes he blinds the eyes of the kids too, or their friends, or different people in their life, and gets in the way of their tshuva. So we've gotten to a point where even at the time of Rav Wasserman, and we are in a much worse situation today than the generation of Rav Wasserman 80 years ago, where he says that the majority of the young generation is cut off from the Torah. The same question can be asked again. The question that we asked before, what do we need? What do you provide somebody that is missing both air and bread? Air being the Torah, bread being the land. What must be our primary concern? For the Torah or for Eretz Yisrael? Eretz Yisrael, Rav Wasserman says, is important to us. But without Torah, we cannot exist as Jews at all. There is no Judaism if there is no Torah. Let no one mislead you. Let yourself not mistake this point. If you are not observing the Torah to your fullest capacity, you, my dear friend, have a very big problem with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How much is your problem with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? It all depends on how much of the Torah you violate. If you violate things like you don't pray with the minyan, but yet you pray by yourself. You don't learn many hours every day, but at least you learn and you know enough to get you by. You are not the most generous, but whenever someone is really in need, you try to give. Okay, so you're not exactly Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but you're not the worst thing in the world. You're not the worst thing in the world. You should get better. You should do tshuva and get better. But if you're in a situation where you don't keep Shabbat, you, my dear friend, according to the Halacha, Rambam, Ilchot Shabbat, chapter 30, Halacha number 15, you are considered 100% an idol worshiper. That's what the Torah says. And also you will find it in at least a half a dozen places in the Shulchan Aruch, including even Ilchot Shchita, the laws of slaughtering, where it says, if a non-Jew or a Jew that violates Shabbat on purpose slaughter the animal, even if they're the best slaughterers in the world, if they slaughter the animal, that animal is not kosher. If you violate Shabbat, you drive on Shabbat, even if you drive to Beit Knesset like Dennis Prager and his friends, even if you think it's a good thing to do because you're going to pray with a minyan, you violate Shabbat on purpose, according to the Shulchan Aruch, according to the Rambam, according to all poskim across the board, you are considered 100% an idol worshiper. And an idol worshiper is much worse than anything you can imagine. How much worse? If you look at Achtov L'Yisrael, Sefer Achtov L'Yisrael, Perek Bet, the second volume by Rabbi Efraim, towards the end, I believe it's page 175. He discusses this specific issue and he says, in the Bet HaMikdash, if a Muslim came, well, there wasn't any Muslims back then, but if an Arab came and wanted to bring a korban to the Bet HaMikdash, we accept it. But if a Mechalel Shabbat wanted to bring a sacrifice, a korban to the Bet HaMikdash, we do not accept it. He's an idol worshiper. Idol worshiper. Even if a non-Jewish idol worshiper, Christian, comes to the Bet HaMikdash, wants to bring a korban, we accept it. A Jewish idol worshiper comes, we do not accept it. Why? A Jewish idol worshiper is the worst thing in the world. That's what it is. That's what the Torah says. Now you may have some puppy that pretends to be a rabbi in your local community that says, no, like Weinberger that pretends to be a chassid, who tells you, no, don't listen to such rabbis that tell you there's punishment, this is not applicable to our generation, Hashem loves everyone, and the fire and brimstone is no good, and all types of nonsense that he tells people. If that's your rabbi, then you, my friend, have a very, very serious problem, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for you. You have a very serious problem. Why? Because your rabbi, your guy that's supposed to be leading you to the light, is actually leading you to the darkness. That's a very serious problem. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel for you. What's that light? If you have that much darkness in your path, that means that you have a very, very precious neshama that a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants you to do tshuva more than the average person. But the Satan wants to keep you as a prisoner even more. And it's up to you to free yourself. Just like Yitro freed himself from idolatry. Just like Ruth freed herself from idolatry. Just like David HaMelech freed himself from all types of things that no human being could even understand to become the David HaMelech that he was. And just like even Moshe Rabbeinu freed himself from things that no human being can comprehend. Just like Rabbi Akiva. The Zohar Kadosh says there were certain neshamot, special neshamot in the world that the Satan worked overtime on to keep them captured. Why? Because these neshamot have special potential. If they do tshuva, if they go to the place of Kedusha. So if your rabbi is one of these Erev Rav that we've mentioned, or one of these Erev Rav that we didn't mention, that is leading you astray, that's telling you that Gehinnom is only 1 year, even though it doesn't make any rational sense whatsoever to anybody that has a brain, because even if you would say that every sin leads a person to Gehinnom is maximum 1 year, everyone knows that you made more than one sin, so how could it be that everybody gets 1 year anyway? Doesn't make any sense. So that means that if you made one sin, might as well violate the entire Torah. So everybody with a brain knows that this is false, but yet people teach this. People teach this. People simply say this as if it's true. They say it as if it's true. And if that's your local rabbi, or that's the rabbi that you're listening to online, you, my dear friend, have a lot of problems. And I feel for you. But the light at the end of the tunnel is that according to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you have a very, very special neshama, that you have the potential more than the standard to become somebody kadosh. Kadosh v'tol. And you should try it. But that means you'll have to overcome some big obstacles. Nonetheless, if you don't want to do it for yourself, think about what's going to happen to the next generation. You may say, listen, I may not be keeping all of these things. I may not, be keeping Shabbat, or even if I keep Shabbat and I learn Torah, but I still continue to watch pornography and waste seed, which is also din karet, and I'm not so careful about other things, and so on and so forth. But listen, I'm still technically considered religious. I live in a religious community. I live in Lakewood. I live in Muncie. I live in different places in New York, in different places in Florida. I'm still Orthodox, modern Orthodox, Haredi, Hasidi, whatever it is, but everybody knows within them that it's all a tachposit, it's all a costume. Bottom line is your religiosity, everyone knows exactly where they stand. And if you know that you're not exactly where you're supposed to be, and you don't feel like pushing yourself to where you need to be, think about the next generation. The next generation is guaranteed to be worse than you. So, if you care less about getting better, know that your kids are going to be worse than you. So while you are not as good, but yet you still married a Jewish woman, you is not as good, you still married a Jewish man, your kids may not ask what you think about their wife or their husband to be based on their religion, but rather based on looks. Why? Because that's just the way it is. Because as Rav Wasserman already said in his generation, that the younger generation is cut off from the Torah. Because more people care about the physical land of Israel than they care about the Torah. Our concern, therefore, must be for the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people cannot exist without the Torah. Without the Torah, you're not going to know that if you desecrate Shabbat, you simply lose your status as a Jew. Your Judaism goes on suspension. That's the reality. Well, no one ever told me. Good. Now you know. Yeah, but now I'm 45, 55. Okay, that means you're still alive. You're still kicking. You can still do it. Yeah, but it's hard to change when I'm 45 or 50 years old and 60 years old. Yeah, you're right. But if I told you, listen, I was on Wall Street for almost 20 years. I know a little bit about business. I know how to invest. I know how to do a few things. I can give you a few ideas to make at least $1 million a year. What do you think about that? Sure, I'll take it, but it's really hard. Forget it, Rabbi. I can do it. I can do it. You're not going to have a problem to listen to my idea of how to make another $1 million a year, right? Why? Because you want the prize. Well, guess what? To be a righteous Jew is much more valuable than $1 zillion a year. $1 zillion. It's much more than that. Why? Because while the money that you can make in this world from any idea is something that you can enjoy, do things with, at best, it'll be useful for you while you're alive. At worst, it'll bring you a lot of curses. But nonetheless, even if you're in the best case scenario, that money cannot do much for you once you're dead. On the other hand, to be a righteous Jew only begins to pay the reward in this world, but the much bigger and the much more permanent reward is in your life that begins after this life. So the reality is, Rabotai, is that anyone that knows that there is life after death and is concerned about what's going to be when they get there needs to also evaluate what would have been my financial circumstance had I not worked as hard as I do? What would have been my marriage status had I not worked so hard at making it better? What would have been my relationship status with my children had I not worked on that as hard as I do? The answer to all of them is that we all know that our situation would be terrible if we didn't work hard at making money, if we didn't work hard at our marriage, if we didn't work hard at our relationship with our children or with anybody else. Everything that you want to be good requires work. That is simple common sense. Which means it is needless to say, but even more pertinent to say, as strange as that sounds, that a person has to realize that if they do not work hard at perfecting their neshama to be in line with the instructions of the Creator, if they don't work hard at that, then surely they cannot expect any good circumstance to happen to them once the accountant has to be paid for, once their life is over. That's just simple reality. Anyone that understands that there is life after death knows that they have a responsibility during their life. And to say, no, but I'm a good person, I don't kill anybody. Not killing people doesn't necessarily make you a good person. It just simply makes you a person. You're not a murderer. That's it. You can still be a thief. No, but I don't steal either. Okay, you can still be an arrogant person that causes a lot of people heartaches. No, I'm not arrogant. I don't even have any friends. Okay, so you could most likely, somebody that has other issues that you're doing. You're doing other things. There are other things that exist in your life, and everybody knows that there's a few things in their life, and there's a few parts of their life that, if they could, they would delete them from the record. Everybody knows that. Well, the record is not something you can delete. Only Hashem can delete it, and He's only going to delete it if you give Him a reason for, by doing TeShuvah. But if you simply only care about yourself, then the rest of the lecture is not applicable to you. Why? Because you are somebody that should really be in a mental institution. But if you are normal, if you're a decent human being and you care about your children or you care about your children's children, you care about society even if you don't have children, you care about the world beyond your own life, then that in itself should make you want to do more of what Hashem says. Why? Because your actions will influence society while you're alive and even after you're dead, much more than any amount of money can. And Rav Wasserman says that while people think that the land of Israel can help us, can help the Jewish people more than anything else, they're mistaken. Why? Because for us to be Jewish in the first place requires air being the Torah. And if we don't have the Torah, and not just literally have a scroll of Torah in every Bet Knesset, that Baruch HaShem we have plenty of. Not just have books, fill up libraries in every house, because there's quite a few people with plenty of books, but not so many that actually read those books. What he's saying is to have the Torah be something that is the priority number one in the Jewish people's lives, to teach themselves, their spouses, and their children and their grandchildren as the priority number one, as the reason and the instructions to life. That's what having Torah means. We need that. Without that, there will be no Jewish people and no land will help us. And he says here that without Torah, we cannot exist as Jews at all. Our first concern, therefore, must be for the Jewish people. And secondly, for Eretz Yisrael, for them. What do we do in actual reality, he says? We reverse the order. We do not cease to cry, Tzion, Tzion, when we should really cry, Torah, Torah, what will become of the Torah? Without Torah, we lack help and salvation. With Torah, we are the strongest people in the world. This is not a mere phrase, it is true, for world affairs have borne it out. He says that while we all know, or at least anyone that spent any real time thinking about it, by putting their obsessions and addictions aside, your phone, your addiction to money and intimacy and honor and so on, you put that aside, you put yourself in a room with some real books, read something, educate yourself and think about it, everyone will arrive at the same conclusion, which is that we need more Torah in the world. We need more Torah ourselves. We need more Torah for our kids, for our spouses, for the next generation. We need. Everyone knows this truth. But yet your average person will donate a lot more money to support the land of Israel. A lot more money to support the political situation in Israel. A lot more money to support different interests and businesses in Israel. A lot more money to support the physicality of the state of Israel, the IDF, than they will to support an avrich. If you go to an average person that has many millions of dollars and you tell them, listen, you are a lover of the Jewish people, why don't you donate a few $1,000,000 to support the IDF? We have to fight these terrorists every day, even though the government, our own government, doesn't actually allow us to fight them like regular armies do, because even the regular police force in America, if somebody even squeaks the wrong way, they could shoot them and not have any serious problems. In Israel, even if you're a soldier and a terrorist is coming to kill you and you kill him, you're going to jail as the soldier. So what happens? All of the soldiers in Eretz Yisrael are either scared to be soldiers because somebody with a plastic knife can kill them and they can't kill them back, or they're simply just saying, listen, this is a suicide mission, not for the terrorists, for myself. Why? Because I know after I kill him, I'm going to jail for the next X amount of years. And that's actually what's happening. So, but if you ask the average person, would you support the next APAC meeting, the next Jewish Federation event, the next Zionistic event, I don't know, support some plane or some type of camp for the soldiers, the IDF soldiers? Sure. And you know what? I'll bring some of my friends. And he gathers some friends and they raise a few $1,000,000. No problem. You generally never see any major campaigns for these causes. Why? The money's running at them. You're never going to see them have, oh, listen, guys, we're trying to raise $500,000 to feed some poor people. No. Why? They have so much money coming to them by itself, and so many people are excited to donate money to these causes that they don't even need to raise money. It's just coming at them. It's like the church. But yet, when it comes to actually helping the Jewish people spiritually, you have to beg, bargain, and steal practically in order for you to fulfill your job. You want to build a yeshiva, and a real serious yeshiva, you literally have to cry on your knees just to get $5 from some people. And if you got 10,000, oh, you owe this person a lung. God forbid you got 100,000. Oh no, then you owe them your kids perhaps. Why? That's just the reality of the world. But is he expecting Bibi Netanyahu to give him a call for donating $2 million to the IDF? Never. Is he expecting any politician to even pay attention to him after he donated a few $1,000,000? No. Is he expecting any standing ovation the next time he shows up to an APAC meeting? No. No. Why? Why should he? He's doing what he's supposed to. So how come you don't do what you're supposed to when it comes to the Torah? Because the Satan only interferes in your mind when it comes to the Torah, and not when it comes to supporting Zionism and supporting all of the physical desires of Am Yisrael. And you see, Rabotai, that's what Rav Wasserman was seeing in his own time. It's almost like literally seeing the news today. We have elections coming up in Eretz Yisrael in these coming days, and literally a major decree in Shamayim is about to be written of what's going to be in the Torah world in the coming future. Because if the lefty, liberal, anti-Semitic leaders get power, like this Rasha Merusha Avigdor, that's even a Safek Jew, is probably not even a Jew, but nonetheless, he makes statements no different than Hitler's. One Russian Jewish woman actually translated some of the campaign videos that he publishes on the Russian networks. And she compared his statements to statements made by Hitler himself. And they're identical. This is someone that's running to become the next prime minister. This is someone that could literally have major control. And he's not the only bad one. They're all bad, including Bibi Netanyahu, which in my opinion is very likely to be a Christian missionary, one of these Messianic Jews. Because he says he likes to learn Tanakh. So do Christians. And he learns Tanakh every Tuesday, I believe. Okay, great. But he doesn't even keep Shabbat. He doesn't keep anything. Okay, that doesn't necessarily make him a Christian. Well, his association with Christians, especially some of his new employees over the last couple of years that we've highlighted, are Christian missionaries. Why would a devout Jew hire Christian missionaries? So, anyway, this is as much proof of as we'd like to discuss about him, but nonetheless, you see that the people that are running for office, running to have control of the government right now, one is worse than the other. Anyone that has the ability to vote should vote only for the most religious parties, and don't assume that someone that has a kippah is religious, because there are some people that are running for office that have a kippah on, but they're actually worse than the guy Avigdor. So you have to go to and research who's the most religious, as far as who is the one that cares most about building yeshivot, building the Torah world. Why? Because that's the next generation, Rabotai. And if you don't think that stuff is going to affect you living in America, you living in the UK, you living in Australia, you living in different parts of the world, you're kidding yourself. Because whatever happens to Am Yisrael over there is going to trickle down and affect the rest of the world. Especially the Jewish world, because it's a decree from Shamayim. And it's not just a decree for the people that live there. We have a very, very serious situation coming up in the next few days with this election. I'm not much for politics, but it's just a reality. Now, even at the time of Rav Wasserman, people simply did not get the message. Him and his Rebbe, the Chofetz Chaim, would literally cry door to door, trying to let people know that TeShuvah is not an option, but rather a survival tactic. People did not listen. People did not listen. Rav Wasserman says that in reality, people reversed the order of importance, and instead of crying Torah, Torah, they cry Zion, 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 Zion. Not understanding that the Torah is what's going to bring them salvation. The Torah is the one that makes them the strongest nation in the world, but without Torah, we are the weakest nation in the world. And he says this is not just a mere statement, but rather factual event. What's factual event? Tanakh. You look at the Tanakh. You see Am Yisrael, every time we were Torah observant, no power in the world can hurt us in any way, shape, or form. At time of Moshe Rabbeinu, different, bigger nations tried attacking us. They couldn't touch us. Why? We had the blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We had the blessing from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeshua ben Nun comes into Eretz Yisrael with a nation of people that literally, their parents were all slaves. No one learned war. No one learned anything. We come into Eretz Yisrael and one after another defeat the most powerful people in the nation. Fast forward more. You go to the time of Shaul HaMelech. No one could hurt us until we started making mistakes. And then unfortunately we lost the blessings. David HaMelech, warrior of all warriors. No one can hurt him, either as an individual or as the king. No one could hurt him. Why? He was a tzaddik, kodesh kodeshim, extraordinary Talmid Chacham, to the extent that the Gemara says that anything David HaMelech says, halacha is like him. Not because he was the king, but because he was a genius tzaddik. Whatever he says, that was what the halacha was. That was actually part of the reason why Doega Adomi and Achitofel, the two heads of the Sanhedrin, that's why they hated him. They were jealous of him. They were the heads of the Sanhedrin, but David HaMelech was a bigger Talmid Chacham. Why? Even though they're the heads of the Sanhedrin, halacha is always like him, not like them. He's a genius. No one can touch him. Why? He got Am Yisrael to do TeShuvah. But then you look at different kings, wicked kings that we had, and unfortunately we had a whole series of wicked kings. The Gemara in Yerushalmi, in chapter 10, in halacha number 1 and 2. In halacha number 2, in Masechet Sanhedrin, Yerushalmi Masechet Sanhedrin, chapter 10, halacha number 2, talks about the different wicked kings that Am Yisrael had that lost their share of the world to come, meaning they are an eternal Gehinnom. And anyone that tells you there is no eternal Gehinnom is either an ignoramus or a liar. I have unfortunately met both. I've met both, and unfortunately, even when you show people proofs, sometimes they're so addicted to the lie that they simply cannot even handle or accept the truth, even if it's not your truth. You show them a clear Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah, that says Gehinnom is eternal in some cases. You show them a Ramban, Shar Agmul, chapter 7, clear explanation in detail saying that anyone that says that Gehinnom is maximum 1 year is a heretic, a kofel, and also someone that has turned God into an evil God for thinking such stupidity. There's a whole chapter about it in the Ramban. Show them. Doesn't matter. Show them countless poskim. There are literally thousands upon thousands of proofs for this. Doesn't make a difference. Why? They don't want to accept the truth for different reasons. That's a reality. There are some people like this. But the Gemara says in Masechet Sanhedrin in Yerushalmi that there are kings, wicked kings, that lost their share of the world to come, which obviously means they're not just sinners, but there are people that are going to be punished forever. And in that Gemara, it actually brings the story of Achaz. Achaz was a wicked king who was not just wicked like typical wicked people, but was actually the Zionist of his day, the reformer of his day, and perhaps the most destructive king we ever had. Why? He had a strategy of how to destroy Judaism, the Gemara says, where he knew that he could not kill the Jewish people because then he would deserve himself a death penalty. So how do you destroy the Jewish people even though he is the king? How do you destroy the Jewish people? He's not interested in killing bodies, but he's interested in killing the Torah. How do you destroy the Jewish people without killing them? And he figured, we have to destroy their connection to God. How do you destroy their connection to God? He put guards at the gates and doors of every synagogue and every Bet Midrash and outlawed learning Torah and praying. Anyone that would come to pray or learn would be killed. This is what he did. Now, unfortunately, he had power for many years, and because of the different merits that Am Yisrael had, one of them being unity, Hashem allowed him to win many wars. Not all wars, but he won many wars. He was one of those kings that had some serious ups and downs. When his son came along, Chizkiyahu Melech was Kodesh Kodeshim. The Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu considered making him the Mashiach. And he was literally moments away from becoming Mashiach. Chizkiyahu was the son of Achav. First thing he did after his father died and he took the position of the king is he took the body of his father, tied it to a horse, and dragged them across every part of the city to make sure everyone sees the shame that he's giving his father that desecrated the Torah. He says his father was a Rasha, his father desecrated the Torah, and he wanted to bring a lot of shame to his father. Not just for the sake of shame and showing people that he's a tzaddik, but also to help his father, who was a Rasha Gamur, and he said that the amount of shame that he's bringing to his body could be an atonement for some of his sins to maybe, possibly,
take him out of Gehinnom eventually. So he wanted to bring him atonement. He was a tzaddik gamur, Chizkiyahu. And Chizkiyahu made a completely opposite law to his father. Unlike his father that outlawed learning Torah, Chizkiyahu put a sword at the entrance of the Bet HaMidrash and said that whoever doesn't learn Torah gets the sword instead, meaning he's going to kill him. Obligated everybody to learn Torah. And the Gemara says you couldn't go into any place that you would go to. You would find Talmidei Chachamim. Everybody knew the entire Torah by heart to such an extent that even the babies, the little boys, knew the entire Mishnah by heart. The entire Torah in regards to Tumah v'Tara, the most difficult part of the Torah, purity and impurity laws. Little babies knew all of it by heart at the time of Chizkiyahu. Now at some point, Chizkiyahu had a challenge. What was this challenge? He made Am Yisrael do TeShuvah. He was literally a second away from becoming Mashiach. Wicked King Sancheriv decided that he wants to attack him and brings 185,000 soldiers, and some say it was 185,000 generals that each had an army of their own. An enormous army, and he brings them all to Yerushalayim to attack. To such an extent there were so many soldiers, so much manpower, that Sancheriv was saying, we don't even need to fight. If we all simply spit, we'll drown the city. When the news came to Chizkiyahu that this attack is literally at his gates, Chizkiyahu did not spend a second being worried and instead said to Hashem, I brought your nation to learn Torah. You promised us blessings. That's it. No warnings, no press release, no, listen everyone, go read Tehillim. No, I'm going to sleep. You take care of the war, Hashem. Why? I did what you said. I followed the Torah. I made sure everybody learned Torah. I did what you said. There's nothing else for me to do. I don't even need to lift a sword. Nothing. And that's exactly what happened. That night, Chizkiyahu, and all of this is written in the Tanakh, Chizkiyahu went to sleep knowing that, according to logic, according to the traditional ways of the world, the next morning there was supposed to be an attack that would destroy Jerusalem, kill everybody. But instead, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Malach Gabriel, who killed every single soldier in the army of Sancheriv, only leaving Sancheriv and his sons alive to see the destruction of what happened in front of them. After this happened, Sancheriv, who was an idol worshipper, said that he wanted to bring his sons as a sacrifice to his false god, and his sons rebelled and killed him instead. His own sons killed him. So we see here, Rabotai, that historically speaking, not just in the story of Chizkiyahu, or David HaMelech, Shaul, Shlomo HaMelech, Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham Avinu, but throughout all of history, when Am Yisrael was close to Hashem, we had blessings that made us the most powerful. No one would want to mess with us. We simply had a blessing that was beyond comprehension for the rest of the world. Even now, despite the fact that there are many people that are anti the Torah, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, and the Jewish people around the world have an enormous blessing. An enormous blessing. Many of them are doing well or better than average financially. Some are even leaders on the charts of success. Many have succeeded in different types of scholarships, achievements, and all types of inventions. The level of success for the Jewish people today is very similar to the time of Shlomo HaMelech. I mean, there is nothing to compare to the time of Shlomo HaMelech. There was literally cities of gold at that time. But during that time, it's called where money meant nothing. Money was like sand during the time of Shlomo HaMelech. But the point is that the Jewish people are the richest they've ever been today, financially. even though we're not even close to being the richest we've ever been spiritually, and as far as our connection to Hashem. But even the Torah that the religious world learns, the Avrechim at the Kollels, the Talmidei Yeshiva at the Yeshivot, the young girls at the seminaries, all learning Torah, that is bringing a lot of blessing and protection to Am Yisrael despite all of the different tragedies we have to deal with. Our blessing is in essence incomplete because we are not serving Hashem completely. But the point being is that we see that the more we serve Hashem, the more blessing we have. Rav Wasserman continues and says, the acquisition of Eretz Yisrael does not depend on our will. As it says in Psalms 127 verse 1, except the Lord build a house, they labor in vain that built it. David HaMelech tells us a prophecy that for whatever reason or another many people either do not know or fail to believe. Most people think that we need to build the Bet HaMikdash. Physically build. They figure that somebody like a Donald Trump or something is going to come and build the Bet HaMikdash, and many fools actually thought that Donald Trump would build the Bet HaMikdash. David HaMelech is saying to us that this is not the case. In fact, if you look at the Midrash on this pasuk and other places, you'll see that one of the prerequisites to know that the Mashiach is really the Mashiach and not a Navi Sheker, a false Messiah, is the fact that the Bet HaMikdash will come down from heaven. The Bet HaMikdash will come down from heaven. It's not something that we need to build. Some say we may need to, Hashem would want us to be partners, and after He brings the Bet HaMikdash from heaven, we're all going to have the merit of putting a stone in to complete it as if we're partners. But the reality is, we're not building any Bet HaMikdash. But many people say, no, we're going to build it, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they think that with enough weapons and money and political issues and so on, we're going to be able to build the Beit HaMikdash, and that's going to bring salvation. David HaMelech is saying quite the opposite. Other than Hashem building the house, other than Hashem building the Beit HaMikdash, anything that you're going to be doing as far as building is going to be work in vain. It's going to be work in vain because it's supposed to come from heaven. You're pushing this whole issue of us building the Bet HaMikdash, this whole notion of the obligation to live in Eretz Yisrael instead of the obligation of learning Torah regardless of where you live. And all of that work will be in vain ultimately, because you'll see that the Torah is what's going to win in the end, not the Zionistic mentality and the people that are in favor of the IDF winning the battle versus Hashem winning the battle. But to spread the Torah among the masses is in our hands. It depends on us. As it says in the Gemara, Masechet Shabbat, page 104a, he who strives towards spiritual strength obtains divine help. So here Rav Wasserman says that we are doing the opposite. We are trying to focus on the land, live here, make aliyah there, support the army, support the politicians. Surely people know a whole lot more about the political situation in Israel than they know tractates of Gemara and Halachot Pesach and so on. It's simply a reality. You ask them, how much do you know about your profession in the real estate business? They can tell you the average property value in their entire city. You tell them, how much matzah do you have to eat on Pesach? They'll look at you funny like, wait, there's an actual quantity, or I can just eat whatever I want? I can just take a bite because I don't really like matzah. No, it's an actual quantity. You have to eat 30 grams to make sure that you're eating the amount. 30 grams 4 times. But if you're the head of the seder, you have to eat it 5 times. Some say more, but nonetheless, the halakha is every person has to eat 4 servings of 30 grams of matzah on the seder, and it has to be matzah shmura. Matzah shmura, you have to weigh it before the seder. You have to know all these things. Why? Because if you're just going to take a few bites of matzah and think that you fulfill the obligation of eating matzah, that's a Torah commandment on the seder, you, my friend, have not fulfilled the commandment or even close to it. Same thing with the other things. You have to know exact quantities of how much wine to drink and how much maror to eat and so on and so forth. These are all things you need to know. Say, oh, yeah, but I never learned this stuff. Okay, you never learned real estate before you learned real estate. You never learned stock market before you learned stock market. You never learned medicine before you learned medicine. These are things you need to learn. But most people are focused on building buildings. And Rav Wasserman says that we learned from David HaMelech that all of that is going to be in vain because you can't take any of that with you and none of that is going to be helpful for you when the time Mashiach comes. What's in your hands? What is helpful? To build and spread the Torah. To help Am Yisrael learn more Torah, to do more kiruv, Rav Wasserman says. Spread Torah to the masses. Zikuy Arabim. Zikuy Arabim is the Hebrew translation to kiruv. Spread Torah to the masses. That's what's in our hands. That's what depends on us. And if you're going to say, yeah, but I don't know what to do and I don't know what to say. Rav Wasserman brings a Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, says, Abali ta'er mesayin biyado. Someone that's looking to become purified, to reach perfection in their servitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises them that He will help them. If you really want to do kiruv, if you really want to spread the Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to help you. In whatever capacity you honestly and genuinely want to do it. Now if you want to do it by donating money, then donate. Donate as much as you possibly can now while you have the zealousness to do the mitzvah. Yeah, but I don't have that much money. I'm only making a few $1,000s a month. Maybe once I get a raise, I'll donate a lot more. No. Donate 10, 20% now of your salary and do it on a regular basis and you'll see the blessings come and then you'll just change the 10 or 20% based on your salary. Don't wait until you make a lot more money to donate. Why? Because you got to show Hashem that you really want it now. If you're really saying you're only going to donate once you have a lot more money, then you really don't want to do it. You really don't want to do it. You're trying to do business with Hashem. That's not the way it works. Somebody told me just today. He's like, listen, I've been telling this person to donate money to Kiruv. It's good for them. And I said, listen, I agree with you. It's good. And I promise I'm going to donate once my family member leaves the hospital. I'm going to donate for Kiruv. My dear student told me, no, that's not the way Hashem works. You don't donate after Hashem gives you the blessing. You donate, and maybe Hashem is going to bless you. Is he sure? For sure. Okay, fine. Donate some money. That this person was thinking that, BeEzrat Hashem is going to get a blessing. Originally the plan was after this other person is going to leave the hospital in a few weeks or a few months, they're going to make a nice substantial donation. But this person is telling him to donate now. Okay, so I'll donate now. He gets a phone call this morning, today. This is fresh off the press. I got the message today. This morning, amazing miracle happened. What's the miracle? They're releasing him from the hospital today. That's the way it works. That's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu works. Yeshuat Hashem ke'eref ayin. Salvation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when it comes faster than the blink of the eye. But it's only when a person understands who's running the show and believes and shows he believes, shows she believes, when everything looks dark, not when it's easy to believe. And that's, Rabotai, what we have to apply when we're doing kiruv, when we're looking to spread the Torah, which is the only thing that's in our hands. That Rav Wasserman says, to go build the Beit HaMikdash, that's not in our hands. To go win the war against the terrorists, that's not in our hands. What's in our hands? To spread the Torah. That's what's in our hands. To go and destroy the Christian missionaries and so on, not in our hands. Not in our hands. To change the whole world, not in our hands. What's in our hands? Share the truth of the Torah. Yeah, but they're also sharing their falsehood. They're also sharing their heresy. They're also sharing the garbage of the world. Some of them have beards and hats and some of them don't. But nonetheless, you have a lot more sharing in the bad side than you have sharing in the good side. You have a handful of decent English-speaking rabbis saying the truth versus countless Christian missionaries and heretics and apikosim. How going to win the war? The war is not won by the numbers. The war is won by merits. And the only way to make the darkness disappear is by bringing some light. The only way to beat the enormous amount of tum'ah in the world, of impurity in the world, is with kedusha. Not with strength, not with weapons, not with violence, but with kedusha. That's the only thing that's in our hands, Rabotai. That's the only thing that's in the Jewish people's hands. Spread more Torah, whether you are religious from birth, or you are a new Baal Tshuva, or you're still secular and thinking about it. Whether you are young or you are old, whether you are male or female, married or single, happy or unhappy, scholar or complete ignoramus, rabbi or student, you have a major obligation to spread the truth of Hashem's Torah in the world, not just in the easy places like your family, friends, and perhaps some local students, but around the world. Every place, but not just any Torah or even your favorite teacher, but the most effective, the most necessary, the ones that help everybody, the ones that can resurrect the dead. And trust me when I tell you, if I spoke to you in a lower tone, in a more patient voice, it won't wake you up from the dead. The amount of people that have been resurrected from the spiritual death that they've been in over the last several years has been enormous. But this is only scratching the surface. There are surely some other very good rabbis that are doing amazing work and resurrecting the spiritually dead in the world. That's the Torah you have to support. That's the cube that you have to support, Rabotai Yekarim. And that's what's in your hands. And you have to make that the priority in your life, more than anything else. There's no problem working and making millions and millions of dollars. But it has to be with the priority that I'm only going to work this hard and make millions of dollars for the sake of publicizing the Torah to the masses. Bringing more truth to the world. Getting people to do TeShuvah for tikkun abrit. For the issues of wasting seed, immorality. Your average young yeshiva bachur is having similar, if not identical, problems to your average public school child. Your average Jew and your average non-Jew are having similar problems when it comes to morality. What are those problems? The overwhelming majority of them are addicted to pornography, as we see in society today from the killer last week, or the killers that we highlighted in the movie, Tikkun Abrit, throughout the last 30, 40 years, all having one common denominator, which is the addiction to pornography. People literally lose their sense of right and wrong as a result of their addiction to immorality, which results in promiscuity with themselves and with other people, sometimes other people of the opposite sex, sometimes with the same sex, and sometimes even with animals. There are over 3 million people in America alone that admit to being intimate with animals, called bestiality. There are countless people that are proud of their promiscuity and having many, many partners. Your average person is proud of the different pornography channels he's a member of and he likes and he enjoys, and they share it openly in society today. And unfortunately, while this would seem to be a normal problem in a public school setting, in a secular setting, in a Wall Street setting, and in all types of blue-collar world, that's where it belongs. No, Rabotai. This is also infecting the religious world, unfortunately. People that have smartphones, in 2 seconds can go and lose their Olam HaBa by going to a simple website and lose their Olam HaBa watching all this filth, this disgusting, obnoxious filth that perverts the internet with over 80 million websites. Some say 800 million. I wouldn't second guess it. There are literally more websites that have filth that will make you lose your Olam HaBa than websites that can help you for anything. Needless to say, ones that can help you gain Olam HaBa, which is probably a single-handed you could have. that exist in the world. The point being, Rabotai Karim, is that your average kid that has a smartphone has probably committed enough sins to lose his Olam HaBa many, many times. His parents that also have these phones could very well be the same. And he said, no, we don't have smartphones. Okay, average kid, average family has a computer. No different, sometimes even worse. No, well, the computer there, okay, television, worse than everything else. Oh no, but we censor, but we do this, but we do that. Okay, so what do you think? Those are the only weapons of the Satan? The television, the phone, the computer? That's just what you think. Sometimes it'll come from a game that you bought him, like a Game Boy. You bought him a Game Boy, you bought him an Xbox. You fool. You just bought him a machine to destroy his Olam HaBa, not only by wasting an endless amount of time playing these stupid games, but aside from that, you're giving him free access to the internet through all of these devices that will allow him to watch an endless amount of pornography and filth on those game devices, whether it be Game Boy that is able to have Wi-Fi connection everywhere practically, that has a hotspot for free, or it's his Xbox or PlayStation and all of these other devices that yeshiva bachurim are crying to me, begging me to share this information with you. They're saying, I have young kids that don't have a computer in their house, don't have a smartphone, but they got a present from their parents to pacify them. They gave them a Game Boy, thinking that the kid's going to be happy. He's like, yeah, the kid's happy, but Hashem's not. Why not? He says the kid doesn't stop watching pornography on a Game Boy. Doesn't stop watching pornography on all of these different things, different tools of the Satan. And even if you take away his Game Boy, you take away his phone, and you take away his TV, and you take away his computer, and you put the kid in a cave, what do you think? You've won the war. You're dreaming. You're dreaming that you won the war. Why? Because that kid has friends, and his friends, they have all of the above. They have the Game Boy, they have the Xbox, they have the phone, and maybe even a few that they could lend your son and just allow him to use it as long as you don't know about it. No, he has good friends. Everybody's got good friends. That's what a good friend does, ruins you. That's what the Satan will tell you. He has friends, and his friends are going to ruin it. And guess what? His friend, or your friend, is probably ruining you also. So what's the solution? Oh, maybe I should get these different sensors or different types of softwares that are going to block my ability to see anything in the world. So all I can see is a phone number. Rabotai, even the kosher phones have the ability to go and see pornography. Everything has. Telling us what I've been telling people all along. The only thing that can protect you from losing your Olam HaBa is to learn Yirat Shamayim. To learn about the parts of the Torah that most people do not want to talk about, even though it is more than half of the Torah. Yirat Hashem, Iotzaro. The fear of the Almighty, that's his treasure. Yirat Hashem. This is the main treasure. The main treasure. And it's also the sign of wisdom. But when a person does not want to learn this, or a person does not want to teach this, then all of the devices in the world are not going to help him. People think that if they get one of these different softwares that are going to protect them, they're not going to see certain things. I've seen young men, smart, clever, and want to beat this desire. So no more phone. Okay, no more TV. Okay, no more computer. Okay. Oh, but I need a computer for work. Okay, so just computer at work. Okay, no problem. No more this, no more that, no more magazine subscription. Okay, great, right. Okay, no problem. And then they would send me a text from some random phone number I never heard of, because their phone number doesn't exist anymore. They cut out their WhatsApp subscription and their phone number, everything doesn't exist. I get a random text message. Rabbi, it's Steve. Yeah, it's me. Oh, Steve, you got a new phone number? No, this is not a phone number. It's not my phone number. It's actually a friend of mine that I met over here. And I've been borrowing the phone, and I need your help. I said, what happened? Oh, no, I haven't stopped sinning for the last week straight. said, how? You don't have a phone, you don't have a TV, you don't have anything, you barely have air. He goes, no, I've been borrowing his phone. Only thing they saved themselves of is a bill. That's it. They didn't save themselves from the sin. Why? Yirat Hashem is the only solution. Fear of the Almighty, fear that you're going to be destroyed and annihilated both in this world and the next world for sinning against the Kadosh Baruch Hu is the only protection you have against the major sins like arayot, like immorality. That's a very key part of the Torah that a person must learn. But unfortunately, people are too focused on the physicality of the world, fitting in, society. And this is what's bringing us destruction, Rabotai. The acquisition of Eretz Yisrael does not depend on our will except the Lord. Building the house, they labor in vain that build it. But to spread the Torah among the masses is in our hands. It depends on us. He who strives towards the spiritual perfection obtains divine help. Up to there is where we heard. Then Rav Wasserman goes into a personal story. Now this personal story is written in the Hebrew version of this Kuntres, but for whatever reason or another, it's not written in the English version. Originally it was written in Yiddish anyway, so this is all a translation, but nonetheless, this is what the Hebrew version says. About 15 years ago, when the Chofetz Chaim saw the leaders of the Polish community, the Yirat Shamayim, the people that feared heaven, the religious among the Polish community, start making aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, he said, what is this for? This mitzvah? Them going to, what are they so aggressive about and they're so zealous to make this mitzvah of making aliyah to Eretz Yisrael? Let them go and focus on spreading more Torah. That's what the Chofetz Chaim said. If what they're doing, the Chofetz Chaim says, if what they're doing is for the sake of spreading the Torah, then every step that they take is a mitzvah. But if not, it's all garbage. Says the Chofetz Chaim. You could also find this in the Sichot HaChofetz Chaim in Chelek Bet, page 28. In addition to this, in this conversations of the Chofetz Chaim, the Chofetz Chaim says, Eretz Yisrael lelo Torah, chatichat adama pshuta. The land of Israel without Torah is a simple piece of land. That's what it is. There's nothing holy about it if it has no Torah. And that's in essence what the Chofetz Chaim was trying to tell people, and that's what Rav Wasserman, his Talmid, witnessed with his own eyes, seeing the Chofetz Chaim say. Why are they all running over to Eretz Yisrael? For what? For what? To spread Torah? Okay, if they're spreading Torah, if that's what the point is, then sure, it's a mitzvah. But if it's just to go live there and what? Because they think that they're going to do a few mitzvot that you can't do outside of Eretz Yisrael, there's no point of doing that. Why? If you're already living in a religious Jewish community right now and everything is good now, but over there it's a bunch of heretics, apikosim and reshaim that are anti-Torah, you're not allowed to go there. And that's what Rav Wasserman explains here. He says, let me explain the holy things that the Chofetz Chaim said. Residence in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. But the establishment of groups of rabid apostates, heretics, is a great transgression and not a mitzvah. This is not the building up of the Torah. This is the destruction. They do not guard the city, but destroy it. This ruin is worse and more dangerous than any disaster the nations have ever brought on Eretz Yisrael. While the previous catastrophes at least atoned for the people of Israel, this ruin, which comes at the hands of the Jewish heretics, is the great accusation on the whole Jewish people of Israel, which gives them millions, while at the same time the Torah only gets pennies, puta. So it's a little bit difficult English, so I'll explain because it's all translation. So the Chofetz Chaim says, living in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah. There are certain unique mitzvot that you can only fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. So it's a mitzvah. But if your neighbors and you're going to be associated and involved and under the rules of heretics, lefty liberals that hate the Torah, that want to ruin the Torah, like the current leadership that wants to outlaw Brit Milah, made the desecration of Shabbat a standard across the land, where just 40 years ago you wouldn't see a single car on the road in Eretz Yisrael. Today it's unfortunately almost the opposite in most parts of Israel. Shabbat is like a regular day for them. Public transportation, unfortunately, is standard almost across all of Israel. Jewish marriage, simply not something that the government cares for. Why? They don't believe in Jewish marriage. Intermarriage, not a problem according to them. Requiring a get to get a divorce, not a problem according to them. Unfortunately, this heretical beliefs are not just in Israel. This is obviously in the exile even more so. There's even people that call themselves religious, but they're reshaim gemurim, like this one Zonah that constantly desecrates the Torah on a regular basis. I'm not even going to mention her name, but everyone that knows who she is knows exactly who I'm talking about. She is a very popular heretic, calls herself religious, recently said that if she was in a situation where her husband did not want her to give her a get, it's amazing to me that someone actually married this witch, but nonetheless, if she was in a situation that a husband did not want to give her a get, then she'd say, listen, I don't care. I'll just get married again anyway, even without a get. And if that makes me less Jewish, that makes me less Jewish. Pretty much, in a single sentence, she took the entire Torah and threw it in the garbage. All of the tzaddikot in the world that are suffering because their wicked ex-husbands are not willing to give them a get, she simply told them all that they're all suffering in vain because, according to her, you don't need a get. And that's it, and it's all the fault of the Torah and the rabbis and everybody, and she just wants to live her life, and if that means she's not going to be a religious Jew, that doesn't mean anything. What does that really mean? She's not religious anyway now. She's a heretic, apikos reshait. But that's the reality. That's what we have in the world today. Every video, this witch, this garbage, actually publicized on one of the channels, tens of thousands of views in seconds. You see a real Shiur Torah by somebody, it's a miracle if it gets 5,000 views. Miracle. Why? Alma de Shikra. World of lies. Just like the same Gematria. World of lies is Manis Friedman. I'm sure that Alma de Shikra is probably very similar to her name, if not some other worse names. Why? This is the reality of the world today. Heretics are everywhere. And if you don't protect your own neshama from all of these evil people, you're simply going to become one of them. And that's what's happening in the world today, because even in Eretz Yisrael, in a place that we would think that your average Jew neighbor would be your friend, in some cases, he's not your friend, he's even your enemy. If your neighbor is this Avigdor Lieberman, that wants to be the next prime minister, that wants to throw all of the Haredi, all of the religious Jews out, throw them all in the garbage, he said. Just like Hitler. Even Hitler didn't say it. If some American would say, let's throw all of the homeless people in the garbage, he would lose his job. If some politician or some celebrity said, let's throw all of the black people in the garbage, he would lose his job. He would simply be on a no-no list, on a do not call list, on every list to simply not associate with this person. If somebody said, let's throw out all the Jews in the garbage in America or in any other normal civilized country, they would have a lot to lose. But in Eretz Yisrael, when the guy that's trying to run for office says he's going to throw all of the religious Jews in the garbage, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Why? Alma Deshika. The world of lies. The world of lies are coming from every corner. And that's why they want to outlaw the Brit Milah. Making public desecration a standard. Jewish marriage, not necessary. Conversion by the reform becoming a standard. There's recently a law by the Jewish court, Imach Shimam Vezichram, the Israeli court, not Jewish court, Imach Shimam, that said that they're welcoming the reform communities, that reform rabbis, which many of them are not even Jewish, to come and ruin Israel, just like they did America and other places. America, Germany, England, everywhere they went, they destroyed the Jewish people. Now they want to come to Eretz Yisrael, and the Israeli court gave them a stamp of approval, saying they're allowed to convert. They're allowed to convert people. Just like they convert dogs, they convert people to their, even they themselves are not Jewish. So they want to take away all of the power of the Rabbanut. Kashrut, simply not an obligation, not necessary at all. Some even want to outlaw it. They think that slaughtering animals is vicious. Shooting them in the head or electrocuting them, to them seems more pleasant. More pleasant for the animal. Slaughtering them seems more vicious. How the logic there works, I have no idea. But nonetheless, it doesn't have to have logic. It simply has to be anti-Torah, and you'll have many Erev Rav support it. Now, if you think that's only lefty liberals that are openly anti-Torah and anti-Semitic that are the ones pushing all of this, you are mistaken. Some of the people behind all of this are people that call themselves Orthodox. Orthodox Jews, in many cases modern Orthodox, like in the case of helping the reform get some foundation and standing ground, was part of the work of the Reshaim of an organization called Itim. Although they have done some good work in the past, unfortunately that good work has been soiled by their support of the reform and the conservative movements that are antithetical to Judaism and the Torah itself. While the founder of Itim is the great-grandson of the Khatam Sofer, who was Kodesh Kodeshim. The Khatam Sofer is surely embarrassed and mourning over what kind of Chilul Hashem his great-grandson is bringing to the world, calling himself not only a rabbi and a religious Orthodox rabbi, but one that also supports the reform movement. This is no different than Ephraim Goldberg and company bringing Christian missionaries to their communities in Boca Raton. This is no different than Manis Friedman supporting child molesters and making fun of the sages and what they say in the Torah about Gehinnom and all types of other heretical statements that he made. This is no different than the heresy that the Weinberger and Prager and all of the other Reshaim that we've mentioned over the years. It's no different than the rest of them. It's no different than Mervis that goes to church and to the imam with the Muslims and the Christians and admires the Pope. It's no different. It's no different. They're all the same. They're all Erev Rav. They're all in the same class. They are all the destroyers of Am Yisrael's Torah. But they will not win. They'll torture us, but they won't win. Who's going to win? Those that fight for the Torah. That could be you. That could be your neighbor. That could be your spouse. That could be your child. That could be your parents. That could be your friend. That could even be your enemy. But nonetheless, only enemy for personal issues, not enemy in Torah. You could be brothers in Torah. And therefore, once you become brothers in Torah, you'll have to realize that you can't be enemies in other things, and you have to make peace somehow. But nonetheless, anyone that fights for the honor of the Torah will win this battle in the end, because the Mashiach will eventually bring the salvation. But he's not going to bring salvation to people that desecrated the Torah. He's not going to bring salvation to people that modernize the Torah, which in essence is a softer way of saying of changing and desecrating the Torah and removing obligations from it. He's not going to come and help all of the people that were against the teachings of Yirat Shamayim. Why? Because he himself is going to evaluate each and every person's Yirat Shamayim and decide whether that person has enough to live based on their Yirat Shamayim. Where do we know that from? The prophet Isaiah, chapter 11, verse number 3 says, "V'aricho b'iyirat Adonai ולא למראה עיניו ישפוט ולא למשמע אוזניו יוכיח ושפט בצדק דלים והוכיח במישור לענבי הארץ והכה ארץ בשבט פיו וברוח שפתיו ימית רשע." Translation, Prophet Isaiah chapter 11 verse number 3 and 4 says the following. He's talking about the Mashiach. He will be imbued with the spirit of fear for Hashem, and will not need to judge by what his eyes see, nor decide by what his ears hear. He will judge the destitute with righteousness, and decide with fairness for the humble of the earth. By smelling, this is, you have a smell, a certain, apparently your sins smell. He will strike the wicked of the world with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. V'aricho b'iyirat Hashem, he's going to smell whether a person has fear of the Almighty. And then he's going to kill people that are wicked, meaning that they don't have this Yirat Shamayim, with a few simple words from his mouth. That's what the Mashiach will do once he arrives, BeEzrat HaShem. You see, Rabotai Yekarim, all of those people that speak against the foundation of the Torah, we don't have to worry about beating them. The reason why we bring up this topic on a regular basis is to warn people from them, but not because we're thinking for a second that they're going to quit. Quite the opposite. They have even more fire to spread their heresy even more as a result of this. But we simply have a job to spread the warning everywhere and also to protest against heresy, because we learned from Pinchas that protest against Chilul Hashem, desecration of Hashem, desecration of the Torah, brings mercy to the world. Now, the problem is that many times you'll see that people think that this brings lack of unity, this brings fighting, and so on and so forth. It's quite the opposite. When you warn people of the dangers out there, you're actually bringing the salvation closer. You're showing Hashem that you love His Torah and not yourself and your own convenience. But this is the behavior, that is contrary to the way of the Chachamim, the way of the Torah itself, that says, no, you should never bring up anybody's name, even if they're wicked and things of that nature. This is a very similar mentality to the what Rav Wasserman over here is talking about, people that are focused more on the physicality of the land and so on. And he says that the Chofetz Chaim even saw people that were they were righteous people, but they were jumping to move to Eretz Yisrael without necessarily considering the fact that now, at that time and even more so now, the land was run by a bunch of heretics. The land was run by a bunch of people that are anti-Torah. What are you going to do there? What are you going to do there as far as dealing with those people? If you're going to spread Torah no matter what and sacrifice your life for the sake of spreading Torah, then everything that you're doing is a mitzvah. It's going to be blessed. But if you're going there to make friends and to find a way to make peace with the heretics, then what you're doing is a sin, and every step of it is a sin. This is one of the things, Rabotai, that many people don't like to believe, but it's just simply a reality. It's simply a reality. The Ramban writes in the beginning of a halachot of how to guard the Mishkan. He wrote different intricate details of how you're supposed to guard the Mishkan, the Bet HaMikdash of the desert. like you would guard a king. And you said that you had to place guards. You had to place guards over there next to the Mishkan. Why do you have to place guards next to the Mishkan? Ooh, what was somebody going to break in? What are they going to steal the Aron HaKodesh? What are they going to do? The Ramban says a place that has guards has no resemblance to a place that does not have guards. And you see, Rabotai Karim, what Rav Wasserman and the Chofetz Chaim, his teacher, were trying to say is that the Torah is what's guarding the Jewish people, what's giving us a right to exist. These heretics are the people that are destroying the Jewish people. And if we are going to try to make friends and think that there is peace with people that are antithetical to the Torah, and that we don't need to fight for the sake of the Torah, we're mistaken. Why? Because it's going to make it seem as if the Torah has no guards. And if the Torah even looks like it does not have anyone protecting it, does not have anyone guarding it, does not have anyone fighting for it, then that in itself gives the heretics more power and more comfort to exert their power over the world of the Torah. It's only because there's not enough people fighting for the sake of the Torah that these Reshaim like Avigdor or Lapid or other wicked people out there feel perfectly comfortable saying things that are literally illegal and against simple morals of society anywhere else in the world. And even in Israel, if you said it about a different group of people, not the religious people, you would go to jail for it. Israel has some crazy speech laws. Like if you say Lashon Hara about somebody over there, you could actually go to jail. It's one of the craziest things in the world. Like some people said something about somebody and it was viewed as a Lashon Hara. They fined them like 50,000 shekels. In one case, the speech of a certain person against one politician was viewed as a threat, even though it obviously wasn't. They put the guy in jail for a year. So they have crazy rules over there. But if those words are against the Torah, against the religious people, kadosh, no problem. Why? We live in a world of lies, Abutai. We live in a world of lies, but there's no way to fight the world of lies other than the way of spreading more of the truth, spreading more Torah. There are a lot of people that exert a lot of money, time, efforts to bring, all types of political letters to the White House and all types of campaigns on the internet and public awareness and things of that nature. It's again, I'm not saying necessarily it's all for vain, but I wish that they would exert at least as much, if not more, of the time, money, and efforts into publicizing the Torah. Publicizing the need for Am Yisrael to learn Torah and to do TeShuvah regardless of where you are in the world. When your average yeshiva bachur is crying to me on the phone on a regular basis and every day it's a different person, and sometimes 5, 10, 15 are sending messages every single day, people I never heard of, thanking me for the movie, but crying to me because they realized how much trouble they're in with this addiction that they have. And this is coming literally by the dozens. That means that there is a very serious problem. One of these yeshiva bachurim goes to one of the organizations out there that says that it's there to help people overcome the desire by protecting their eyes, and says, why don't you show them this movie and help people, because this movie helped me and helped a lot of people already, and the teachings helped us, and that's the only thing that helped us. No, we don't teach about the sins, and we don't teach about punishment. We like to, teach the softer approach. What softer approach? The guy is as immoral as it could possibly be. What soft approach is going to work on him? What are you talking about? No, we go by the way of the Chachamim, like Rav Hutner and the Steipler Gaon and other Gdolim. And he gives them a few quotes that these Gdolim said that have nothing to do with the topic. But he doesn't show him what they did say about the topic that made me look like a puppy. But that's the reality. Alma de Shikra. World of lies. World of lies, Rabotai Karim, is even more pertinent in that particular part of the world of immorality and the Brit and that particular teaching than anywhere else. Anything to do with issues of Klippa has a lot of problems and Erev Rav and a lot of major issues. That's why there are certain works of the Arizal that you'll find no commentary on it whatsoever. Especially in the end where it talks about the issues of the Klippa and things of that nature. No sage touched it. No commentary touched it. Why? Anyone that tried had too many problems to be able to handle it. Too many. Simply like it would just destroy their lives. Because this is fighting the Satan head first. So again, it's one of those things where on one end we're making it seem like the fight is big, which it is. On another end, it seems like it's hopeless, but it's not. The message here is to know that it is a very big war. It is a very personal war, but it's also a national war that each and every single one of us can win. How? By learning and publicizing as much Torah as we can. That's the way to win. That's the only way to win. And if we each take charge of our own lives to follow the Torah completely to the best of our ability, and every time we falter, we get up, we do TeShuvah, we say I'm sorry to Hashem, we make a commitment not to do it again, we learn more about the topic in order to build a spiritual fence around us to become stronger, not to do it again, and we help other people also not fall for the same sin by sharing lectures and books and regarding to the topic, and that's it. We fall again, we do TeShuvah again. We fall again, we do TeShuvah again. We don't ever plan to fall, but when we fall or if we fall, we do TeShuvah. But we continuously share more and more Torah. If you can't share Torah because you're not on social media, that's not a problem. You can share Torah by simply donating. If you don't have any money and you're not on social media, no problem. You have some type of time. You live in a Jewish community. You could share some flyers. You can get some other people there to donate by convincing them to donate. Every single person can do something. Every single person can do something. And if you say, listen, I'm barely making it out on my own, how could I do? Okay, if you're barely making it on your own, that's fine. Get a little stronger. But I would assure you that by helping others, you are going to get stronger. And if that's not enough of a motivation, what Rav Wasserman is trying to tell us here is point blank. If we don't start helping everyone around us, whether we know them or not, whether we like them or we don't, if we don't help everybody have an opportunity to repeatedly see the truth, even if they don't like it, and even if they curse us, and even if they dislike us, but to continuously send everyone the truth in different forms and different ways. If we don't continuously do that, it's not just bad for us as selfish, but it's eventually going to affect us. Why? Because Hashem works measure for measure. If we take care of His kids, even if they're not our kids, but it's His kids, He will take care of our kids. If we care less about His kids, then why should He care about our kids, even though they're His kids? It's all measure for measure. The more we help Am Yisrael discover the truth, and even the righteous Noahides in the world that want to live the truth, that are supporting it, that are doing everything possible to share it with more Jews and to share it with other people, the more we spread the Torah to the four corners of the world, the more we're showing Hashem that we are fighting for the sake of the Torah, for the sake of His honor, with the tools that He gave us. But the more we simply care less, and we're more likely to spend $5,000 or $10,000 on a watch than we are to spend on helping more people learn Torah, helping more people discover Torah. We're more likely to spend money to go on a non-kosher Pesach vacation to some hotel that has a beach with mixed seating and mixed dancing and Amalek and all types of Erev Rav, but we think that just because they have kosher Pesach food, it's allowed the more delusional we are that Gan Eden is even going to be a place we're going to go to. That's the reality, Rabotai. You cannot think for a second that you're going to live a sinful life, a selfish life, and spend all of the blessings that Hashem gives you on simply enjoying the heck out of this world and care less about Am Yisrael and think that everything is just going to be dandy. What's been happening over the years is that people simply did not fight enough for the Torah, and therefore we continuously go down worse and worse and worse. But now, being in the last generation, being in a generation of Mashiach, we each have our chance to learn as much Torah as possible, share as much Torah as possible, get Am Yisrael and the whole world at least an opportunity to see the truth for what it is. So when the time comes and the pasuk says, "Uba leTzion Goel leshaveh pesha beYaakov," that the Goel, the Mashiach, will come to help all of those, to bring salvation to all of those that have done TeShuvah, we can happily say that we are among them, but not because of our confidence in our own merits, but rather in confidence in a Torah that says, "Kol hamezakeh et harabim ein chet ba'al yado," that anyone that helps the public do TeShuvah, sin does not come to him. The fact that we helped other people do TeShuvah on a regular basis, that's what we have confidence in. We don't have necessarily that much confidence in how righteous we are and how much Torah we know and all that stuff. We don't know how righteous we really are, and even if we're right or wrong or anything else with our own actions. We don't know. We know what's written. We do the best that we possibly can. Great. But the reality is, what do we know for sure? We know how much time and effort and money and everything else we are using to help other people. That's what every person is allowed to have confidence in, because they know exactly how much of themselves they're dedicating to help other people do TeShuvah. Not just help them get bread, help them get a ride to the mall, help them make sins, but rather help them do TeShuvah. If a person is continuously exerting their time, effort, resources to learn Torah and publicize Torah, they can have confidence that when the Goel comes, when the Mashiach comes, they will be among the ones that are in the front line for that Goel to smell the Yirat Shamayim and be satisfied with what he sees and give them a blessing, a chazaku baruch, and not be among the Reshaim that talk against it and fight against the Torah, and they will have a completely opposite end, as the pasuk says, that the Mashiach will kill those that do not have the Yirat Shamayim, those that are Reshaim. So you see, Rabotai Karim, we have to worry about the next generation. That next generation includes us. That next generation includes our kids, even if you don't have kids yet. That next generation is somebody that could be living next door to you, or somebody that you're never going to meet but is on the internet. That next generation is Hashem's children. We have to worry about them. We have to do everything possible to help them. That's what we have to do. But we have to do it in the only way that's permissible in the Torah, which is following what it says in the Torah. Not following our gut, not following some guru, not following some new way. No, following what has worked. What has worked since the beginning, what we see Gdolei Yisrael do. Not the local rabbis do, and not even popular rabbis, but rather what the Rav Wassermans and the Chofetz Chaims of the world do, what the Stipler Gaon and Rav Ovadia did, what Moshe Rabbeinu did and Rabbi Akiva did. We say what they say, we do what they do, because that way we know that if there's a mistake, we have somebody to rely on. We have somebody to rely on. If I say something to you that's wrong, I go up to Shemayim, they're going to ask me, why did you say this? I'm going to tell them, listen, I said it because it says it over here, this page, that number, this Gemara, which he learned from his rabbi, he learned from his rabbi, he learned from his rabbi, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. So if you have a problem with me, no problem, bring Moshe Rabbeinu, he explained to us why he said this, because I said it. I have something to rely on. What are you going to rely on? Weinberger? Manis Friedman, Goldberg. What are you going to rely on? What are they going to rely on? No one says what they say. No one says what they say. Maybe Hitler says what they say. Maybe in Mein Kampf they read it or something. Maybe the Enlightenment movement leaders and the Zionist leaders, Ben Gurion maybe said what they say. Maybe the atheists of the world and the missionaries of the world say what they say. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't say what they say. That's what you have to do. So even if you make a mistake, but you have someone to rely on, you're good. You're good to go. This, Rabotai, is the teachings for today. BeEzrat HaShem, each and every single one of you will look at yourself in the mirror during this Pesach and not only focus on removing all of the physical chametz from your house, but also, and even more importantly, the spiritual chametz that you have. Any bad character traits, you have to make a commitment to at least take one of them and start fixing it. Start fixing it starting now. You have made some mistakes, try fixing it before the Chag. Whether it's a mistake with your spouse, a mistake with your friend, a mistake with your boss, your partner, your employee, try to fix it. Try to rectify it. Try to remove that chametz from your life. It's okay to say I'm sorry. It's okay to be wrong. As long as you admit it and you move forward and you apologize for it and you do something, you try to rectify it. Try to remove all of the spiritual chametz that you have ongoing. If you constantly curse, if you constantly get angry, if you're a stingy person, an arrogant person, or any type of bad character trait, make a commitment to start working on this bad character trait to eliminate it as fast as possible, and BeEzrat HaShem, ultimately remove it in a larger capacity throughout the year. But at the very least, make a commitment not to do it during the holiday. Enjoy the holiday. Enjoy the holiday. Talk more Torah. Do more mitzvot. Learn more things. Remember, the seder, primary responsibility that you have is to eat. Obviously, the required matzah, the wine, the maror. You have to eat the right quantities, but you also have to say as much Torah as possible about Yetziat Mitzrayim, especially to your children. If you're one of these people that's going to have a lot of guests, remember, if you have guests and you have children, your children are priority. You have to spend as much time as possible telling your children everything you know about the Exodus from Egypt. Everything you know about the Exodus from Egypt. That's the primary responsibility of the Seder. It's not to host guests. It's not to entertain them. And God forbid you would have a kids' table on the Seder. No kids' table on the Seder. The kids sit at the head of the table with the father. Why? Or the grandfather. Whoever's going to be saying the most amount of Torah, that's where they sit. They sit next to him to hear the most amount of Torah. No kids' table on Pesach. Why? The kids are the priority on Pesach. All the measurements, do it before Pesach. Do it before Shabbat. All of the learning you do, we have a few lectures about Pesach. We have quite a few lectures about the Exodus from Egypt. Learn as much as you possibly can over these next couple of days about the Makot and different Midrashim. There's countless teachings that we have. You can find on our app, the BeEzrat HaShem app, or the website, or YouTube. You can find it, Baruch HaShem. You just type it in the search box, anything you want, and you'll find many, many things there. The key is to learn as much as you possibly can and get yourself ready for the Seder. The more you prepare yourself for the Seder, the more you will become ready for the Seder and you'll have an amazing Seder. But if you arrive at the Seder and you have nothing to say, or you have only like 5 minutes worth of words, that means you're not ready for the Seder. That means you're not ready for the Seder. You have to come there and you have to be ready. That's the main key. You have to make sure that you're ready. If you live in the exile, you have to do the Seder twice. Even if you live in Eretz Yisrael, but you're only there for a temporary amount of time, you're planning on coming back to Eretz Yisrael, then you have to have 2 days there also. 2 days there also. Some people go on vacation to Eretz Yisrael for Pesach, thinking that they can only keep 1 day. That's a mistake. That's a mistake. As long as you live in the exile, you have to keep Yom Tov twice, 2 days. 2 days in the beginning, 2 days in the end. That means that Pesach for people that live in the exile is 1 day longer. Ted for people that live in Eretz Yisrael. But nonetheless, you have a extraordinary amount of time to spend with your family, to learn Torah, to do mitzvot, but spend the time on that. Don't worry so much about everything else. Work is only allowed if it is for the sake of a mitzvah, or it's to ensure that you don't lose. You're not to work to make money is forbidden on Chol HaMoed. So we have a whole shiur that discusses these halachot. I'm just giving you brief certain things. So if, let's say, for example, you're a broker or you're something of a commissioned salesperson or something like that, you're not allowed to work on Chol HaMoed. Generally speaking, you're not allowed to work on Chol HaMoed for really almost everything, but unless, again, if you're in a situation where if you don't do something, you'll lose your job, you'll get fired, or the client can lose as a result of it, things like that, then it's on a case-by-case basis. You have to ask your Rav to see if you're allowed to work during Chol HaMoed. But don't assume that just because it's not Yom Tov, like the first 2 days and the last 2 days of Pesach, that you're allowed to work automatically. That's a mistake. The Gemara in Masechet Moed Katan says people like that lose their Olam HaBa. People that desecrate the Chol HaMoed and treat it like it's a regular day have no share of the world to come. So it's a very, very big deal. Don't play with it. Don't assume anything. You have to make sure that everything is the best that you possibly can. Now, of course, if you make mistakes, don't lose your mind. Don't ruin the whole holiday. Do the best you can to fix it. Do TeShuvah. Move on. Most horrible, most horrific chametz that could exist is not even bread. The most dangerous chametz that exists is arrogance and anger. Arrogance being the main thing, because arrogance is what gives people the comfort to be angry at everybody else and exert their anger. But the point being is, that's more chametz than bread. You have to remove all of that. Remove it and keep it out even after Pesach. Aside from that, also remember, if you're going to get a haircut or a shave or anything like that, you have to do it before Shabbat this week. You can't do it during Chol HaMoed. Can't do it during Chol HaMoed. Not haircut, not shaving. So you have to do everything that you want to do before the Chag. I would not leave it for the last minute. Don't leave it for like Friday. Try to do it as soon as you possibly can, tomorrow or Thursday, but try to do it as fast as you can. Watch our lecture that has to do with the laws of Pesach, both the one that we did this year, that has some unique laws for Pesach this year because it starts on Motzei Shabbat, and also the ones that we did in the previous years that have general rules for Pesach and Chol HaMoed and so on. Again, it's been amazing to do shiurim with you guys, even though we don't have the live audience that we're used to. At the very least, we see that Baruch HaShem, the audience online that's watching live, continues to grow. Baruch HaShem, keep sharing these lectures. BeEzrat HaShem, you continue to grow. We continue to grow with you through Torah, mitzvot, milut chasadim, and BeEzrat HaShem, when a day comes and HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent his Mashiach, sent his Goel, and we will know the statement finally by heart of Bayom Ha'u Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shmo Echad.
הנה אנחנו פה שוב בחלוקה של מור ישראל. הנה פה הגיע משטח של יין. הנה תסתכלו איך הצדיקים לוקחים הכל למען משפחות נזקקות של ארגון BeEzrat HaShem. הנה פה ממש משטח של יין, מיץ נביאים, ממש מגיע. עכשיו מגיע בשעה כזאת המאוחר, ותראו כמה צדיקים פה עומדים, הכל בהתנדבות. לפני פורקים כולם.
יאללה, לא, אתה בא? זה שלהם היין, חשבתי שזה שלנו. זה שלנו בריין. לא, הם שבדו עד הסוף. מה קרה? שאול, מה? לא, רוצה יין, אמרתי זה לא שלנו. זה לא, זה של BeEzrat HaShem.
הנה זה
איזה צבע שאול?
חלוקה של 100 של BeEzrat HaShem.
אין לו מקום. אין לו מקום באוטו, הוא הולך לפנות אותו, הוא הולך להכיל למקרר, למכפיש לבית כס להכניס שם דברים.